Hello, this is Dan Wu. Today I'm going to talk about Tonglen. Tonglen is the Tibetan Great Compassion practice. There are many Buddhist heart practices that help open up the heart, help develop loving kindness, help develop tolerance, help develop unconditional acceptance, help develop empathy, joy in others. A very well known one in the United States is loving kindness or metta. Sharon Salzberg has a New York Times best-selling book on that. Metta recitations and explanations are all over the place. If you Google it, you'll find books, podcasts, essays, blogs, and on and on. The reason I want to focus on Tonglen is that I began Tonglen practice at nearly the same time as I began metta practice and some other Buddhist practices over 13 years, 8 months ago. I've been doing Tonglen every single day since January, early January of 2003. It is a very paradoxical practice because most times uh, before then, if I felt pain, whether made up or real, uh, my mind's going, when will this be over? When will I feel better? Somebody take care of it. I can't stand this. Any number of things. In essence, whether it's pain or distress, anger, fear, what happens, the fists get clenched. I'm holding on to what I want to happen. Uh, and I'm pushing away, I'm punching away at the feeling inside. Or I can do it gently. I can use some kind of loving kindness, self-compassion practice, and try to change my feelings by uh, essentially accepting what I was feeling and going through a series of chants or recitations that uh, I would be freed of pain, I would be safe, I would be secure, I would have friends, and then direct that outwards through layers of people, those I love, those who I'm fairly neutral about, those I don't really care much about, all the way to those I hate, and then finally the entire world. Um, so it's a very different practice because in Tonglen, as I've learned it and as I practiced it, I'm not trying to push it away. I do something else. I transform the feeling. And I'll give you a concrete example of this. In just after about 10 months of practicing Tonglen, or almost 10 months of practicing Tonglen, I was at the end of October 2003, I was suffering from long-term back problems, including periodic acute back spasms. When I had back spasms, the pain would be intolerable. I would be in pain whether I was standing, sitting, lying down. Moving was painful. In fact, at the lower base of my lumbar spine, there was a very tight knot that I could feel by putting my hand on my back. And this resulted from this had gone on for over 12 years and can trace their course of the causes, so to speak, to um, back injuries or collisions playing soccer. Also in 1992, my back went out when I was helping deliver a load of paintings to a studio, not my paintings. Um, and my back went, I wound up lying down or falling down to the alleyway where I was taking the paintings out of the car. The passerby saw me there, and I wound up being taken to a hospital where they gave me muscle relaxants, painkillers, and the like. In the process of having the experience I'm going to talk about, I've been taught that with Tonglen, you don't generalize things. I don't use my mind to conceptualize the pain. I don't create a big story around it. I try to be very aware specifically what the problem is. And so I've been doing this when I felt uncomfortable meeting difficult people, or when I felt angry at work or other situations, or when I felt a lot of uncertainty, fear of the future, or when I've regretted something I've done, and I'm telling myself, you ought to be better at responding, you need to improve. So there are countless ways. It could be anything from spilling some coffee on a clean shirt just before I walk into a meeting, and all of a sudden feeling this dissatisfaction, unease about how I appear. And that's happened many different times over the years with coffee and shirts, so it's not as if it's only happened once with me. Or it could be having a diagnosis of terrible disease, and or having some other kind of diagnosis that of an ongoing disease process, and being struck with some fear and anxiety, uncertainty over the diagnosis. So with that in mind, the basic process of Tonglen is with anything that I become aware of, and that's a prerequisite. I need to be aware of it. Any kind of angry thoughts or reactions in my body that I don't really like, that my mind doesn't like, I focus on specifically what the feeling is. I don't try to make a big story about it. I don't say things like, well, I just spilled some coffee on my shirt. I'm going to go into a very important meeting. I'm going to look like a slob. Who designed coffee cups? How come they don't have coffee cups where this won't happen? This happens all the time. All these years, coffee cups haven't changed. Why do I keep doing this? Maybe I should stay away from coffee before meetings. So stories can go on and on. So in Tonglen, for example, in the coffee situation, I would be aware of all these voices and thoughts and feelings. And on the in-breath, I breathe in, and I would say something to myself like, may I accept and take in all these feelings about spilling coffee on my shirt. And may I do that with all the feelings of every sentient being in the world who spills coffee on their shirts before important meetings. Then on the out breath, I'm breathing out, and I breathe out openly and ask that all sentient beings who have these kinds of emotions and feelings because they spilled coffee on their clothing, may they all be free of these feelings. So I'm actually taking in all the feelings I don't really like. I'm not trying to change them or make them go away. I'm just letting them come into my body. And on the out breath, I'm pushing out a wish that everybody else would have these exactly the same things going on at that one moment. Let me take in all those sentient beings, all those humans. I don't think non-humans would have this kind of reaction to spilling coffee on themselves. So in this case, the term all sentient beings would mean human beings. Well, let's go to October of 2003. I was in the kitchen cleaning up It was night, and I was bent over to take a garbage can out of underneath the sink when a sneeze attack took over, and in a bent over position when I sneezed, my back went. I could feel it. Now I kind of feel the back go. I can feel just intense pain everywhere. And that had been the first time in 2013 where I had that experience. I was barely able to move, and every movement brought more pain. What I decided to do was to see what would happen using various meditations practices I have been doing daily for 10 months by that point. I hobbled to a room upstairs, which at that time I was using for meditation every night. The rest of the family would be in bed when I would begin a 1 hour sitting meditation, going through different kinds of meditations. Sometimes it would be a 2 hour meditation, but essentially I have been diligently practicing at night. As for Tonglen, I was practicing that during the day or night whenever something came up. I remember managing to hobble upstairs into this room. It was night. I did not turn on the lights. At that time in my life, most of my meditation was in an unlit room, mostly at night, where I would sit facing a wall, much like Zen practitioners often do. After I just did some mindful breathing for a while, I thought to myself, I've never tried Tonglen for this back pain. Let me try that. And at that time, I was very crooked because of the pain. I would still be, I was bent over, unstable, and afraid to move an inch or a micro inch because it would set off another series of spasms. So I thought, I'm going to be very specific about this. On the in-breath, I'm going to tell myself, I welcome this pain, I want this pain, I accept this pain, and may I take in the back pain of all sentient vertebrate beings, or beings that have spines. Basically, I figure out I'll make it very specific to a specific kind of pain. Invertebrates wouldn't have this specific kind of pain, so this may sound funny, but I was trying to be as concrete as possible and as little conceptual as possible. So that sounds like a lot of words, but breathing in, it went pretty fast in my mind. Breathing out, I breathed out a wish that all sentient beings who have backbones be freed from this kind of pain, and that I can lift it from them. I'll make a comment here, and this is very similar to one of Shantadeva's verses in the Way of the Bodhisattva. Shantadeva is a very famous very famous Indian monk who wrote the Way of the Bodhisattva, which in verse forms explaining how to become one. Now I'm doing this peculiar practice, breathing out, breathing in, for an indeterminate amount of time. Indeterminate to me because I didn't look at any clock or watch. I don't know how long I was in that room. I had an immense amount of pain that I was breathing in and breathing out to let everybody, every sentient being with vertebrates, give me their pain, their back pain. At some point in this internal breathing in, breathing out chant, I suddenly felt what felt like a kick in my lower back. I heard a loud popping sound, and the intense pain disappeared. It was an incredible experience. It wasn't something I expected. And I reached around with my hand to feel that knob of tight muscles and tension around my lower lumbar. It was gone. I didn't have it. Uh, it was very manageable pain. And this is one of many experiences that I've had with different forms of suffering to realize that uh, the reality of the suffering is always a fraction of my reaction to suffering. In this specific case of the pain, it was my reaction to the pain, my fear, my pushing away, my uncertainties, my wants uh, that amplified the pain. It's like turning up a knob on an amplifier, and I was turning it higher and higher. The more I wanted to push it away. At least that's my hindsight opinion of of what a drastic change life can be when all of life's problems aren't internal problems. They're just things that happen. I also want to talk about what Tonglen can do in other circumstances. Um, I can't remember whether it was 2003 or 2004. I think it was on a weekend. I've been working a lot of hours and I was tired. I wasn't getting enough sleep. So napping, I have begun napping as a practice. Uh, Napping today is still a practice. I used to not pay attention to my body saying, hey, I need some sleep. So at this point I was ready to take a long nap. And the bedroom I was using was also the room I meditated in at that time. It's on the top story of our home, and it's across a yard separates that room from a neighbor's house. And the neighbors at the time were always arguing. They were a married couple. The wife had an incredibly loud voice. Not only loud, it was a raging voice. When she argued with her husband, you'll hear lots of fucks and fuck yous, and you would hear so much anger in her voice. And they were going through a lot of arguments on a frequent basis. So I was trying to sleep. I was lying down. I heard their voices, and I decided to try Tonglen for them rather than wishing they would quiet down, wishing that they didn't publicly exhibit so much rage and anger through their voices. I'm glad I didn't see them. So I began the Tonglen practice lying down. I was really tired, and my specific, the actual concrete emotions I was having was they need to quiet down so I could sleep. So again, using the concrete as a start, which was the decibel levels and the anger and emotions. I breathed in, saying silently inside myself, may I take your anger and your noise, your rage, and everything associated with your anger into me. And on my out breath, I breathe, may you be free of this anger and the like. And before I knew it, I fell asleep. They may or may not have quieted down before I fell asleep, and when I woke up, I felt refreshed. I did not know whether it was purely a coincidence or not, but something happened in that moment, and all I needed to know is that that was an outside circumstance that I never liked. I really, I think when people are like that, are toxic, it's not something I want to be caught up in. And taught me that this is swirling around really loudly on a nice day through the air in our neighborhood. And I feel sound asleep. I've also encountered what Tonglen can do in a work situation. A few years ago, someone I used to work with called me to ask if I can provide some services to his client to participate in a conference call about intellectual property issues and enterprise software issues. That's something that I've had a lot of experience with. The man who called me was somebody I've known since law school and has at times been on the other side of me in my career in conflicts, in client conflicts. He's always been very self-centered, someone who lived in his head, somebody who seemed to have difficulty hearing anybody else talk. At least that was my impression and my experience. So going into the meeting, I thought to myself, well, I wondered how he will be, whether he's going to be like this, what I remember, or whether it's going to be something different. When I got to the conference room, he came in roaring on a cell phone to somebody else about something else, something not at all to do with the reason why we were meeting. So I sat in a conference room chair as he was going on and on about something that had happened, and he was expressing a lot of anger with his secretary. He was angry, very angry. I can see it, I can hear it, I can feel it. And unlike my past reactions where I would have thought, well, here he is again doing the same thing for the last 30 years, asking me to give up some of my time to help. Even though I was paid, I didn't think it was good for the client to have me come in the room and listen to this raging about something that had nothing to do with the client, or any kind of raging. In the past, I would have been wondering myself, why am I working with this guy again? How long is this going to last? It's just as bad as I remember. But instead of all those, I decided to practice silently, both metta and Tonglen. So in the metta practice, I included him on the chants to others about metta for them or loving kindness for them. And on the Tonglen, what I did was I thought to myself, okay, he's very mad, upset, raging. So let me breathe in his anger, his rage, whatever he was going through. Let me take it myself and let me breathe out that all sentient beings, including him, could release their anger, their rages into me. And I breathed in and out, doing this, and he essentially quieted down and then refocused, got back to work. That's actually not the first time I've had that kind of experience over the years with people who are angry or toxic or full of drama. What I've learned out of all those things is that if I'm practicing these practices, I'm not reflecting back or amplifying for them their emotions, their negative emotions. And because of that, I'm not making it worse. I've heard and read that in the theories of human communications, 95% of it is nonverbal. It has nothing to do with the words. It's something we emanate to each other. And I've also read studies that in a room full of in a group of people, the one who's angriest will usually have a bunch of heart and other common events go on in his body, a fast heartbeat, constricted breathing, things like that. That one person will, over a period of time, will cause everybody else's heart rates to increase and other people's respiration rates to become like that person. I began to think that the opposite can happen. I'm not saying it did with me, but it would make sense clearly when a Dalai Lama shows up in large crowds, I hear uniform reports of how everybody in the crowd feel something change inside themselves. I mean, it may well be that's because they know it's a Dalai Lama, but it's a good example of how peace inside emanates out to an audience. In 2011, I got called, if I remember correctly, in mid-January, um, by a friend of my father who told me that my father was hospitalized with advanced cancer, advanced dementia, advanced heart disease, and with great concerns that my father could physically harm my mom. Unfortunately, my parents have have had a bad relationship for years, although they would never admit it. My dad's abusive. He had been abusive when I was young. He remained abusive as I grew up. Even at the time that I got the call, I learned from people that they were all worried about my mom, that she was terrified and completely stressed out. And my dad was on my forgiveness list of events of the past that I needed to move on from. So part of the Tonglen practices for me include forgiveness practices and acceptance practices, not just compassion, though they're related. I've done Tonglen for abusive people. It doesn't mean I will hang around and just be abused, but I'm going to do Tonglen rather than react in a similar fashion. So I went to the hospital about 10 at night. I drove in, found out which room my dad was in, walked in the room. He looked very fragile. He was fitfully sleeping. And when I sat down to look at him, I felt a gigantic release. I forgave my father for all the harm he had caused my mom, my brother, and myself. All the other things he had done over a career of harming relationships. He had very few friends. We were basically cut off from almost everybody in the family clan. My dad had a lot of problems, which I attribute today to post-traumatic stress disorder from flying airplanes, P-51 fighters during the Chinese Civil War and losing more than 80 of his fellow pilots, and also environmentally and genetically from the family. I don't know if I ever would have really considered those things if it weren't for the fact of the Buddhist practices and a variety of heart practices, because it made me realize that I never had been in his shoes. That if I had been in his shoes and encountered what he encountered, I would probably be pretty fucked up, and he might actually be better than I would have been. But knowing that and telling myself that, and slowly over time, releasing a lot of the negative emotions and energies about the past. That didn't mean that I had completely forgiven him. When I sat in the hospital and felt this forgiveness, and felt everything leave me, everything negative about my dad leave me, and with the replaced thought that I will help this man die peacefully as best as I can. One of the things I did in helping him was when I visited him, quite often he'd be trying to sleep or fitfully sleeping. I would hold his hands, one of his hands, and I would immediately go into metta, loving kindness practice, and Tonglen practice for him. And I noticed every time I did that, his sleeping would get better. He wouldn't breathe as difficultly. I could feel him relax. Uh, my dad, progression and dying took 10.5 weeks. Uh, so this is something I practiced over the 10.5 weeks. Seeing him in the nursing home and later in hospice care in the nursing home. Also going to the nursing home during this dying process, I could see all many disabled older people, not all of whom had any kind of visitors, and certainly gave me a better understanding of hospice, of those who volunteer to help with the dying. I have a good friend in San Francisco who's been doing that for a long time, ever since he himself was diagnosed with terminal cancer at a time that terminal and incurable cancer at a time that he had children, I think ages 3 to 6, and he's outlasted his prognosis over 25 years now. Tonglen continues to be a daily practice. What it really means for me is if I'm in any circumstance where I'm not feeling friendly, or I'm feeling the extreme opposite of friendly, whether it's towards somebody else or myself, I know that's a time to practice. I don't practice Tonglen for the day, sitting down in the morning, thinking that that really is the approach to take. That I will automatically take that approach during the day. I only take the approach during the day because I'm doing it a long time. And it's pretty automatic for me now to begin to practice because I'm more aware of when I'm being reactive. There are a wealth of resources in books and on the internet, on YouTube, in Buddhist groups, in social media, and magazine articles about Tonglen, but it's not as well, I believe, covered as is loving kindness and metta, at least in the United States. I hope you heard something here that will help you breathe. Every kind of practice I've developed in my own life and integrated into it, one of the impacts for me has always been the freeing of the breath, a shedding of weight, an ability to be less reactive, and ability to help. Tonglen is of great help, not just for myself, but for any unknown peoples. Both, I feel that practicing Tonglen is the same as spreading seeds. When you plant seeds, trees will grow. When you plant compassion, compassion will grow. Thank you. That's the topic for today. I hope you find something here that will inspire you to learn how to practice Tonglen, and then to actually practice it. Learning how to do things and reading testimonials or hearing somebody like me talk about it is not the same at all as doing it. May all beings have love. May all beings have compassion. May you be free of suffering.